Thanks for joining me. As I think everybody knows, I'm Lane Smith with TAG. This is the third session I've done. And today we're talking about making your recommendations. Just as kind of a reminder, wanted to look at the customer engagement lifecycle one more time. We're talking about the recommend phase. Just to kind of recap everything, pre-sales, the whole goal of that is preparing for success in that very first meeting. Just setting the stage so that you're going into that meeting prepared and you're ready to roll. First meeting is all about listening, asking questions and listening. You're not pitching, you're not trying to solve their problems. You're trying to start to build that relationship and start to uncover some of their pain points and challenges they're having with IT. The goal of that meeting is to get the next meeting, which is an assessment. That's the one we talked through last week. And this assessment really is kind of doing three parts to the assessment. You, the salesperson, are there. You're continuing to build that relationship. You're reaching out to influencers, executive team members, and other important players in the company and understanding what they're talking about. The sales engineer with you is doing another set of assessments, running a scan on the environment to discover what's broke, also to get clear device counts, and then also doing really that technology stack assessment where you're gauging how that customer meets against your better IT practices. Today we're talking about the recommendation meeting. This is a really critical step. I'll say it one more time. Don't ever go from that assessment to a full proposal with contract. That's what we're going to talk about today. And then part of what we're talking about today will also include discussion with the customer about the technology stack adoption and also the roadmap. So we're going to be talking about what's heading out onto the roadmap as well. The goal for this one is simple. This is really where you're going to get that yes from the customer. Right off the bat, we talked about never propose to close. Really, you want to get the customer 100% on board with your solution, the pain points that they need solved, your solution and how it solves those, and then a general idea of the pricing. And you want them to say, yes, please go ahead and send me a proposal with all the details. We're ready to move forward. It's really critical to get that verbal from them before they're sitting there with contract in front of them. Because what's one of the main reasons why people don't buy? Anybody want to guess? Nobody? All right.
Uncertainty.
Yep, there you go. Uncertainty and the need for information. What happens when you give them a proposal with a bunch of legalese that they've never seen before? You just stop. You had them ready to go, but then, hey, I've got this one more thing for you to have to learn about before you move forward. What that does is it stalls the sales cycle. By getting this yes ahead of time, this verbal yes is something shifts in their mindset, their mentality. I kind of liken it to like a marriage proposal. You'll never see a wealthy person go over to their girlfriend and say, I'm really considering asking you to marry me, but first I'd like you to review the terms of my prenup agreement. That's not how it plays out. You get the big ring, you ask the question, you get the yes, and then you work through the prenup agreement. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. You want to get that emotional yes. You want to get them on the same page as you, that they're ready to move forward. And then that contract, instead of it becoming a hurdle to decision, it's a hurdle to moving forward. And they've already decided to move forward. That makes sense? That's why we have this. This is the reason why we have this stage, is so you can get that yes. And then you're on the same team. You're just trying to get to a resolution of the problem that you both agree that you know how to solve. Let's take a quick look at the steps we're talking about today. A lot of this phase is really prep. So we're going to talk about demoing products. We've got a lot of sales engineering time is going to go into place. We need to determine what offering and pricing they're going to get. All of that needs to happen between the assessment and this recommendations meeting. Obviously, the actual meeting is when we're reviewing the recommendations, and then we're going to adjust as needed. In the past, where you might send somebody a proposal and then they start to you go back and forth. What we're doing is we're not giving them anything. We're having a discussion. We're showing them what we're talking about, and we can go back and forth. So this meeting might have 2 or 3 meetings to get to the point where they're ready for the proposal. What are we going to do before the meeting? We're going to do a demo, and we'll do demos for 2 types of sales: voice sales and also cloud-based, so Azure virtual desktop services. A lot of folks have a hard time wrapping their head around what exactly that experience is. Doing a demo is really critical in that scenario. When you're talking about voice, because there's so many options out there and features out there that the different phone systems, part of the demo is getting them on board with your solution, but also just you validating what you think are their highest concerns. What are the things that they really need to see? And that's why you go through this demo, to really understand exactly what it is they're looking for. I talk a little bit about demo guidelines here. Actually, when I was at Continuum, I went to several training classes on actually how to do demos, which is pretty cool. I learned a lot. We ended up going back and retraining the whole sales force on how to do demos. And I would assume everybody on the phone here has done a technology demo at some point in the past year. And what do those demos look like? They're just miserable, right? They're point here, click here. Oh, we do this, they do that, we do this. And they go through the 900 different features of the product, and they make sure they don't forget anything. Well, what they forgot is to ask you actually what you care about, and to actually present it to you in a way that you might remember something. Some guidelines that we've got for a demo is, first off, you want to grab their attention. You need to do something to help them to remember what it is you're talking about. So you got to stimulate their mind either through a story or visuals or statistics or whatever that might be. You want to help translate why that particular feature is going to bring them the value that they need. You want to have a structure, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second, that keeps their attention. And then there's that 80-20 rule again. Don't focus on everything, only focus on what you believe they need. And so that's why we don't do a demo until we've already done an assessment. We really have a good idea of what they need. Because when we do that demo, we really want to focus on those 4 or 5 things that we see that is going to bring the most value to them. There's my little goldfish. I found this stat a few years ago when I was doing that training. I thought it was pretty funny. The attention span. I don't know if this is true or not, but it certainly feels true, doesn't it? When Twitter first came out, I was like, what the heck is that? Why would I ever want Twitter? I still don't want it. God knows, don't want it at all right now. Our minds now are so, our attention is so short these days, because we read snippets on our phones and we see snippets on video or on Facebook and everything. And so our attention span is just getting shorter and shorter and shorter. These sessions for you guys, I know it's got to be painful listening to me talk for an hour. It's painful for me talking for an hour. When you're doing a demo, you can't just go on for an hour and drone on. You've got to have some sort of structure to it. That structure is pretty simple. And think about a movie. If you're watching a movie's what, 90 minutes long? How many different scenes happen in a movie? Basically, a movie is a stringing together of a whole bunch of different scenes. And those scenes are what, 2 to 5 minutes, 2 to 7 minutes long. One movie might have 7, 8, 9 scenes, but those scenes get your attention. You get enthralled. You might lose your attention a little bit, but then, so let's say you fade off for 5 minutes. Well, hey, guess what? There's another scene that's going to grab your attention again. And that's kind of what you want to do with a demo. Think about if you've got a 30-minute session, you're going to have maybe 5 minutes for intro, 5 minutes for finish. It gives you about 20 minutes. That's like 5 or 6 things that you can talk through in 20 minutes time. When you look at a movie scene, what do? Well, we place the setting. We talk about the people. We introduce the problem. We resolve the problem. So we're going to show them how we solve the problem. Then we're going to transition to the next scene. Kind of think of that when you're doing a demo. It should be a loop. It shouldn't be, hey, let's look at this feature. Now let's look at this feature. Now let's look at this feature. It's, hey, you talked about this challenge. Here's how we're going to solve this problem. And then you show them, and then you refresh that, or you regurgitate that. Okay, now we solved the problem. Now let's keep moving on. You guys follow me on this one? After we do the demo, we're going to talk sales engineering here. And so really, what are we doing here? First off, you, the salesperson, the sales engineer, are going to sit down and say, okay, we're going to look at the technology stack, and we're going to say, I'll talk a little bit more about it in the next slide, but what do they absolutely need to fix before we can move forward? That's what your engineer is going to have to determine, and they're going to have to come up with a plan for that. They need to determine, are they a good fit for our core offering? And one of the things you'll find is, as I'm teaching, and we haven't really talked about it much in this sales training, is that you should really have a core offering that is applicable to all of your customers. Your customers are all range from 20 to 50 employees. All those customers need all these items. When you go out there, you want to understand, hey, are they actually a good fit for us? Because what you don't want to start doing is taking that core offering and tearing it apart. Because once you tear it apart, one, you lose your core value proposition, because your value prop should be tied to that offering. And two, you're giving your operations team a nightmare. If every single customer is different, you might be selling a lot, but your company's not making any more money because your operations team is twice the size it needs to be, because they're trying to manage who knows what. And then the final piece is, what are their extras? We look at extras, Azure, cloud, whatever that might be. Kind of a refresher on the tech stack. We've got sort of 3 categories that we're going to go through. First off is what needs to be replaced. Servers that are out of warranty, firewalls that don't have the right security features, older desktops, Windows 7 desktops as an example. All of that needs to be replaced right out of the gate, and that's going to be a project. Then you've got minimum compliance, which is, hey, it's a decent firewall. It meets your requirements, but it's just not your preferred vendor. You guys like WatchGuard, it's a Meraki. You're going to add that to the roadmap and let the customer know that, hey, in the future, we're going to be looking at this. And then what do they have that's recommended, good to go? And again, it's a good thing to show them, hey, you're doing a great job on these things. They definitely don't want to hear how horrible everything is. They want to feel like they've done something right. That's really important too. Just to hit on kind of what we look at is our recommended solution as your core: help desk, NOC services, on-site and remote. Does everybody understand the difference between help desk and NOC? Anybody not understand? No? All right, cool. Nick, I saw you on mute. No, there you go. So help desk is people, NOC is infrastructure. That's basically kind of how I look at it. We've got our quarterly business reviews, a whole slew of security, DNS protection, security awareness training. Sell them a firewall. No reason not to now. They're so inexpensive. Dark web monitoring, cloud backup, and then also the latest thing we're starting to see is that endpoint detection response with SOC services backing it up. Right now, with our recent partnership with Solutions Granted, that is finally at a price point that makes sense. Pretty excited about that. And what are these extras that I was talking about? Obviously, your voice or surveillance, Microsoft 365, or even Azure. Bottom line, though, is this meeting, you're going to have really 2 kind of recommendations going to fall into 2 buckets. Tech stack compliance, which is what do they have to fix before they can be your customer? And then what are those recurring services going to look like? We're going to focus on what's of value to them. All this time we've been asking questions and understanding, and we might have 50 pain points that we've identified, but only a couple of those are going to move you forward. And so it's key to figure out what those are. Now you can do that through conversations between the last meeting and this meeting to help hone that down. Sometimes it might be in this meeting where you're throwing it up there and saying, hey, we've got all these issues, really, what are your top issues? Let's talk about the actual meeting. We're ready to go out to their recommendations meeting. A few things, you guys have seen this, and this is really where this starts to make a big difference and a lot of importance here. Typically, in the past, you would probably go out on site for this meeting and do it. But actually, with everybody getting so comfortable with Zoom, it's actually a really good opportunity to leverage this meeting as a video conference, set the expectations with the customer. It's going to take anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour. The reason why you set that expectation is you want to gain agreement on all these three components before you move forward. So it might be that your first part of the presentation, you're talking about their pain points, and maybe it is that you don't have a clear understanding of where their biggest problem is. You use this meeting to, hey, we need to whittle this down. We've got 25 challenges here. Let's look at them all. We really need to understand where you need to focus your time. Ideally, you've got that figured out by the time you get to this meeting, but if not, that's okay. The idea, though, is until you have that agreement, you're not moving on to solving the problem. And so it might be that the meeting lasts 10 minutes because you use it to understand exactly, you present your case of everything that's wrong, and you say, where do we need to focus? And then at that point, you just stop the meeting and say, all right, great. We're going to come back. We're going to have another meeting in 2 days. We're going to do it on video conference, and we're going to make sure that we've got your pain understood, and we're going to present a solution for you. If you get through the solution and they're not on board with the solution, guess what? Stop, come back, say, all right, well, we need to go back to the drawing board. Let's do that. We'll talk to you in 2 days, and we'll come back again. In the past, where you might have given them a proposal, and then you're going back and forth and maybe removing stuff from the proposal or changing the proposal, you're no longer doing that. Phone call, it's a conversation, maybe some PowerPoint slides like I'm going to show you, but you haven't really given them a proposal yet that says this is what you believe they need. And one of my overriding sales philosophies is once I give somebody a proposal, it's what I actually think they need. That's my word. Hey, I've spent a lot of time getting to know you, understand your problems. This is what I think you need. And for me, as soon as I go back on that and say, oh, okay, well, you don't need this, or you don't want to pay for this or whatever. And I just say, okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll pull this back. You're losing integrity there. But when you do get to that actual proposal, they should be ready to move forward. And that's what you believe they truly need. But what I've done here is kind of got a sample presentation of what you might present to a prospect. And in this case, I'm representing iNet and Tag is the prospect. Before you put this together, so I've seen, we do have quite a few of our members that have already got these slide decks put together. And it's much like a quarterly business review, which I know none of you guys have been to my operations trainings, except for Ben. Ben, I think you've been there. Oh, and William, you've been there too. But if you recall from operations training, what do we talk about with the QBR is you can't have a standard template that you present to everybody all the time. And why do you think that is? Well, it's because you're presenting to different personality types for different customers. If you're sitting there, you're presenting to the CEO, who that's your decision maker, and you know that person's a high D, what do you not want in this presentation? Or pick on somebody. Kevin.
Yes, I was going to say, because I'm a high I,
Yeah.
and CG's a high D, so I deal with it every day. So you don't want any fluff. If they're a high D, you don't want any fluff. You want to get right to the point. Make your words as concise as possible. Not too many stories. You'll lose their attention. And conversely, if you're a high I relationship, get to know them. They might like stories. They might like to talk about everything else but what we're talking about.
Yep, you got it. And if they're a high C, so if it's that controller, right, what do they want to see? A lot of detail.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes sense to have a deck that is a template that has all that, but based on who you're going to meet with, you pull out whatever you don't need, or you skip over that slide based on who you're talking with. Again, that platinum rule, it's important all the way through the sales cycle, especially now. I do like to take the kind of opportunity, and I use this analogy of a three-legged stool to kind of just let them know and set the stage on how you're going to present this recommendations, this conversation. First thing is, hey, as you know, we have an interest in ensuring your employees' success through technology. During our first couple meetings, talk with you about the challenges you're having. We made it a point to talk to some of your important team members. And so we're going to reiterate what we've heard from them and want to make sure we're on the same page there. Also, part of our assessment was we looked at IT better practices. So we want to compare how your environment is to what we found are the better practices for our customers. And then finally, we also want to look at the stability and security of your overall environment. What we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be touching on all three of these key components. And what we found is with three-legged stool, hey, that perfect balance is really what our customers need. Then you can go into talking about what are your concerns specifically. When we met that very first day, the first three things you mentioned were not confident your data is secure, you're having challenges with your remote workers, and you're not really happy with your current IT. You want to go through that and you say, do you agree? Are these things that we should be focused on fixing right now? Now, this is like I said, maybe they listed off 20 things. Okay, well, go ahead and have those 20 things if you need to. But by the time you move from this slide, you need to know at least those 3 or 4 things that are most important to them, because that's where you need to focus the conversation. And if you're at that point where you don't know what's most important to them, it might be you get through this and you say, okay, now that we understand better what you're really worried about, we're going to stop the call today. We're going to schedule a call in a couple of days because we want to take this back and make sure we're presenting the right solution. All right, so you can have a slide on their employees. Talk about when we were outside, we talked to Dwight and Toby and Daryl, and here's some of the problems that they were having. And did you know about these problems in the past? Do you think these are really important issues that we should be focused on trying to solve right away? We want to understand where you're at with this. Have that conversation with them. So as you guys can see, going back to that three-legged stool, we're talking about the employees here first. Now we're looking at let's look at security. Has everybody seen a slide that looks just like this? I would think so, if you've run the Rapid Fire Tools. Rapid Fire Tools, pretty cool product. It pumps out all kinds of information, but it also gives you a nice couple PowerPoints that you can use. This is the first slide. I think this is a really decent slide because it helps bolster 2 things: security concerns and lack of proper IT management. When you look at some of these issues here, it shows that they've got 20 employees, but really there are 20 user accounts, but they only have 8 employees. And those user accounts are still active. They're not disabled. Those ex-employees could still gain access to their system. That's a security breach. And what else is it? sloppy IT management. This is a hit against their current IT provider. Same thing with this, security groups. Same thing with the computers. Security concern, hit on the current IT provider. Old operating systems, really, if they could forgive the IT provider for that, because a lot of folks will, there should be no forgiving IT provider for having products that aren't supported on the environment. That is literally the MSP's job, is to make sure they're at least have the stuff that's supported. This is a good slide. A lot of good talking points on here to create that chasm between what they have and what you're presenting. Another good slide, the risk and issue score. Who can tell me what this score actually means? Anyone? William?
Well, all right, it's basically just well, I don't know. You talk with Dale Stein, it's pretty much kind of fluff because it's it's an amalgamation of all the little bits and pieces and what are the most pressing security items, or not security, but what hadn't been patched, what hasn't been updated, right. How many user accounts are still floating out there.
Yeah, so it's the most, I like the word pressing. So I kind of look at this as it's the weakest link. And so this is actually, this report here, this 94, is the highest risk score of the whole report. If they happen to have, let's say they had 100 computers and 99 of them had a risk score of 0, but one of them had a risk score of 94, that's what the slide would look like, right? It wouldn't be somewhere in between, it would be 94. So it's kind of fluff, it's kind of like a shock and awe, scare them, but it's a really good talking point to highlight that, hey, you guys, maybe you are doing a good job, but very quickly, 15 minutes, we were able to find a hole big enough for us to really just go in and hack your network, no problem. That's the conversation you want to have around this one. If you've seen that presentation before, you've seen this slide. There's probably 25 more slides that look exactly like this in that rapid fire report. If you're talking to CG, like Kevin was saying, do you think you should go through every single one of these slides? No, right? If you're talking to a controller, yeah, maybe so, right? They want to see the detail. It's good to bring up one just as a talking point to show kind of the detail you've gone into. Normally, I wouldn't recommend going into everything. You could put a slide together like this that was, hey, we've hit on all of these issues. We've showed you we've got a very weak link. Here's a bit of details on that weakest link. But here's the bottom line, is your current IT environment is not being properly managed, and it's leaving you at a major security risk. And you can have a few bullet points there. I think it's your call. And again, this is like, who are you talking to? That's how you're going to adjust this part of the presentation. So now we move on to our better practices. And this is really that tech stack compliance. You can see here on this chart, I've got what's not compliant, what meets the minimum, and what's recommended. As an example, you could use this slide if I'm talking to that ID. This is the only slide they're gonna see. Hey, you guys have no IT processes, your security's not good, your connectivity's okay, your infrastructure's okay, collaboration's doing fantastic, and endpoint's doing fantastic, right? You have a quick conversation there. Or you could use this slide as an introduction and go into much more detail. Here's an example of more detail, and you can, all the different things we're looking at, and you can literally go into as much detail as you feel like you need to based on your audience, okay? And this, just so you guys know, these are charts that came from a spreadsheet that I built out for the tech stack assessment. If that's something you want, let me know. We also have a strategic partner managed services platform that has a questionnaire that will create these type of charts. They go a lot better looking than I've got here, to be honest with you. but still there's visuals. When you're looking at the IT better practices, really give them a high level overview. If you need to go into detail, present that detail however you feel like you need to. But ultimately, you're going to end up with some sort of summary. And this summary here is really going to be what you're going to solve. We're going to solve security for them. We're going to solve their warranty. And we're going to solve their current IT model. Eventually, once we solve that, we're going to basically help them start moving towards leveraging technology as a strategic asset. And if you remember that very first meeting, what did we do? We told them that they were here, we're going to get them here, but it's going to take them baby steps. These first three things, guess what those are? Baby steps. We're slowly moving them towards IT becoming a strategic asset. If you get to this slide and they don't agree with you, what are you going to do? Stop. You're going to say, well, we're not quite on the same page. Time to go back. Let's figure out what's going on. We want to make sure that we've got all the right challenges that we're trying to solve for you. Then it's time to present your solution. As long as they agree, and you wanted to get them, yes. Hey, do you agree that security is a top concern? Yes. Do you agree that we need to replace that server? Yes. Do you agree that your current IT model is not cutting it? Yes. Now we're going to move on to the solution. First off, we're going to implement a comprehensive security plan. And now this is where I see a lot of members get stuck in the weeds. I hear this over and over again. Oh, well, we didn't include security awareness training because the customer didn't think they needed that. Or we didn't do DNS because they didn't understand the value. Well, you shouldn't be presenting the value of everything. You should be presenting the value of the full package. And without your full package that you've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what your customers need, they're not going to be secure. But when you're selling them security, you're selling them a full suite of security. They're not pulling stuff out. You're going in and you can talk about a proper server solution. Now, this is where we might actually be talking cloud. I actually had this happen last week working with Gary and Tamara up in the Northwest, and they had an opportunity for a customer. The first time I talked with them a couple weeks ago, they had a dozen Windows 7 desktops and an outdated server. And our plan was, hey, well, this is a perfect candidate for a Windows Virtual Desktop. We'll move them 100% into the cloud. Gary goes out, he talks to him, he has this conversation with them, and he says, hey, we think you guys are a great fit for the cloud. And the customer's like, well, actually, when we talked with you a couple weeks ago, we've decided that you pointed out how we had all these old desktops. We agreed. We went ahead and purchased 13 new desktops. So now that argument for the cloud is not nearly as strong. I had Gary gone and really done a whole lot of engineering and really crafted a perfect solution for him and come back and give him that proposal, he would have lost the opportunity. But instead, he came back, had a conversation, and now what are we doing? We're doing this. we're speccing out servers, and then he's going to come back and say, okay, hey, here's the general concept of what we're looking at. Does this make sense? Yes or no? All right, yes, great. We're going to move towards a proposal. Maybe take a moment here so everybody kind of understand, when we want to recommend going to the cloud. There's a few different times. One would be they've got outdated infrastructure, and so you're needing to replace all their desktops or their servers. In that scenario, you might move them to a full virtual desktop environment. If their small client maybe doesn't have a server even, it's still an opportunity to move them to the cloud, but it might not be a full cloud component. It might just be Microsoft 365 with Teams and SharePoint. There's lots of ways to move into the cloud. It's important to understand that it's not all in or nothing. There's lots of levels of moving a customer to the cloud. And as you get in sales opportunities and you start to have those questions, feel free to reach out to Tag. That's one of the things I've spent the most of my time on over the past 2 years here, is really understanding the cloud strategies and technologies that our customers need. Here, we're going to talk about implementing our comprehensive IT support plan and whatever that might be. That's that core offering. This is your time to really pitch the whole value prop of what you do as a company and how you're going to support them. And this could be 1 slide or 10 slides or however you present your offering. But basically, you're going to go through, give them your full pitch at this point. That was the last slide. You want to get a yes on all fronts. Hey, does this security plan make sense? Do you feel like this is going to solve your problem? Yes. All right. We're going to put a new server in. Are you ready for us to deploy a new server? Or are you ready for the cloud? Either way, you want to get that, yes, let's move forward with the cloud. I want to see some detail. Same thing with the comprehensive plan. Yes, that sounds way better than our current plan, our current provider. We're interested in moving forward. If you don't get those yeses, you're not ready to talk money. So what does that mean? Hey, we got to gather some more information. We're going to come back to you and have another discussion. Nice thing is you're doing these over Zoom, so you're not having to travel out there. They're not taking 2 hours of their time. It's quick conversations, multiple touch points, not a bad thing to build a relationship. Let's talk money. There's lots of ways to do this. This is actually out of that tool managed services platform. For those of you that saw the Azure training series that we saw, I don't know if you remember Tony used the whiteboard feature a lot. I was like that, to be honest with you. When I would be presenting this in the past, it was never via Zoom, it was always in person. We would never give them a sheet with pricing. We would actually, here's the solutions, let's talk pricing. And what you're kind of doing here is just getting a feel for, are they good with $3,000 a month? You could change this to be $140 an employee, however you want to present this. It's nice to show that, hey, your plan includes all these different levels. And for simplicity's sake, all I have is this comprehensive plan. But you could put, hey, for $3,000 a month, you get a firewall, you get help desk, you get NOC, you get all this. You can list all that out. That's not a problem. But what you're not listing out is pricing for every single item. The only time you're going to list out pricing for separate items is in that tech stack stuff. So getting them up to speed. As you can see here, I've got implementing a server solution. And you might say, hey, you absolutely need to replace your servers. It could be 25 grand or whatever that number is. You agree that you need to do it. Now let's talk about how you go about doing it. Do you have the budget to do it this year? Does it need to go to next year? Should we look at putting it on a lease? Do we need to do a server a month for a few months? What's our strategy there? You want to get them on board with how they're deploying it, not just saying, hey, it's 25,000, 50% up front, let's go. Hey, it's 25,000, how do we pull this off? Is really the conversation you're having. And alternatively, you could, if they were still a little bit confused on whether they wanted to go to the cloud or not, then you could have a conversation around pricing and stuff with the cloud and say, hey, look, if you move to the cloud, we no longer have this large CapEx fee. We've got a monthly fee. We're estimating it to be about $12.50 a month. Does that make sense? Get on board with pricing here. And when I talking pricing, one of the questions I had last time was, how detailed does the pricing need to be at this point? And the answer is not that detailed. Your core offering, it's going to be right on, right? Because it's what your offering is, and there's only so many variables. How many employees and how many servers do they have? That's the only 2 variables they have there. That's going to be right on. Azure pricing is not going to be right on, and neither would server pricing. In the case of if they were going to deploy servers, if you want to get actual pricing, what's the process you have to do, right? Well, your engineer has to actually design the server. They have to go to Dell or HP or Cynix or Ingram Micro or whatever, get an actual quote for that server, make sure they haven't missed anything, and then translate that to you. They have to go through and do a full project plan and get this exact number. Well, you don't want them doing that until you have a yes to move forward on an estimate of the number. Because if you do that and the customer says, oh, geez, we don't want to do that, we want to move in the cloud, well, you just wasted a whole bunch of time, engineering time, which is billable time that you lost. And then also, that's not the point of this session. It's to get them on board, keep it high level, not get into the detail. Same thing on cloud. Right now, in 15 minutes, I can create a quote using the Nerdio tool that would give me a pretty solid estimate on what a customer's Azure environment would cost. But to get an actual quote from SureWeb with the exact specs and everything in place might take me 3 or 4 days worth of going back and forth. So I don't want to waste that 3 or 4 days if the customer's not even interested in cloud. Once you get through the pricing discussion, time to ask the question. Hey, based on what we've seen today, do you agree that we're solving the right problems? Yes. Do you agree with our solution and how we're going about it? Yes. Do you agree that the estimated pricing that we talked about makes sense and you're willing to pay for that? Yes. Okay, then. If we put a proposal in front of you, are you ready to sign? Yes. That's what you want to get. This is really kind of when you ask for the business. And if you don't get that yes, if you get well, go ahead and do a proposal and then we'll have to look at that and determine, you're not done. Don't give them a damn proposal. They're not ready because that's a stall. That's a stall. They're basically putting up another hurdle for you before they make their decision. You need them to make this decision. You need to make them that emotional, yes, we want to move forward before you put that proposal in front of them. Because until that happens, they haven't decided to move forward with you, and everything you give them is just one more hurdle for them to decide. So what do? If you don't get it, go back, reschedule another meeting. Keep the conversation going until they're ready, until they say, yes, we're going to move forward once you get us that proposal. That's what you want to hear from them. Okay. Exit criteria, pretty simple. It's what I just talked about. Agreement on all three, and you got that yes from them. Once you get that, hey, if it takes your engineering guys 30 hours worth of engineering to put that quote together, so be it, because it's time well spent because they're going to move forward with you. And that is all I have.
See you later in the week. Thanks, Lane.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was fantastic.
Thank you.